what kind of nightmare. That way I can watch it afterwards and find out. Okay. Let's see. Okay. What the heck is that? All right, guys. Somebody's got their phone on. All right. I hear a little echo. Okay, guys. So I'm Paul Lozick, and I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit. This will be a little bit different. I was telling everybody we do this on a regular basis. We're basically messengers. We've got something important we need to share with people. And so we do it with this Zoom platform because there's people in other places that cannot be here in Corpus. We've got people from in different parts of different states and whatever that are listening in. This is ongoing all week long. And the reason is because there's something very extraordinary that we're trying to get across to people. It's something you will not hear in the news. It's something you will not know about probably from friends or family because it is new. And when new things happen, they take a long time to get out there into the world. And so I've got a really weird thing on my screen, so y'all bear with me. So these are some things that changed our world, right? So prior to penicillin, people with infections often died, and we rode on horses for a long time. You know, the thought of getting in a horseless carriage was unthinkable. But when that happened, it took 10, 15, 20 years for people to accept getting in a vehicle. They used to think that all the air would be sucked out of your lungs and you would die. And there was no gas stations, and how will that work anyway? And it scares the horses. And then, of course, people came up with airplanes, and that was, imagine being the first passenger. I don't think so. And so these are things that take time to be assimilated into our societies, but these are things that really have impacted our world in a dramatic way. And we see today how they have really changed everything in our society, radio, television. Imagine having people now in your house with you, coming through a box, talking to you from somewhere else. This was a concept that was unheard of prior to a certain time. And then all of a sudden, we all have this. We all are listening and watching. And so a major impact that happened. And then think about cell phones. I remember when I was a real estate broker, and my pager would go off, and I'd have to get off the freeway and stop at a gas station. And there's always that lady with all the quarters. And you have to wait in line, and then, you know, she takes an hour and a half, you know, and then your quarters get stuck. And then we had cell phones, and all that stuff was in the past. You know, all of a sudden you can communicate, and now we can communicate anywhere in the world. Major, major impact on the way we live and the way we act in the internet. You know, I think if somebody had told me about it, and I do actually remember when they were telling me about it, I used to work on Padre Island, and I thought it was a stupid idea, you know, and this idea of information flowing through a virtual window, and all these things took a long time to begin to be accepted by people. And here's the thing. There were people at the beginning who saw this and understood it. It was an opportunity. It was a breakthrough. It was something that nobody knew about yet, but it was going to be huge in the future. And some people got in front of these waves and rode them. And these people have made a lot of money. They've been blessed. They've also been able to help a lot of people because everything on here was very helpful to our society, to us as people. We used to travel to South America as missionaries. We used to have to go on a ship back in the 50s. Took a long time. It was very cumbersome. And then next thing you know, we were on airplanes. So things change. So I want to talk to you guys about this new wave that is forming. And one of the most important things that can impact our society right now is basically the way we view medicine and health the way we view how we take care of our bodies. You hear talk about Western medicine versus Eastern medicine, you know, the way they work over there. I've got a Chinese chiropractor where Delia and I lived in Venezuela. He's totally different about everything. His approach is different. Western medicine right now is all about basically fixing what went wrong after it goes wrong. And they generally want to fix it with a lot of medication. Didn't change. Okay, I'm going to see if I can do this again. Sometimes this happens. You guys bear with me. Let's see. So we'll see if this,
Yes.
is it changing? Not changing.
You're good.
Okay. So basically when a new wave forms, there's people that recognize it, there's people that don't. There's people that ride it at the end when it's almost on the beach, runs out of power. But there's a new wave forming because science is evolving pretty rapidly now. And science in the 1990s began to understand some things about our cells. And that has led to a tremendous amount of research. And I'm going to show you some of that here in a minute. And I don't want to bore you with the research, but what I want to impress upon you is that there's something going on that everybody's not talking about. It's not around us yet. Nobody really knows. And if you talk about it, you might seem weird. People might run away from you. But there's stuff going on now that's going to change everything that we know about health and aging. And so this new wave that's forming, basically this has a name, and they are basically redox signaling molecules. And it's specifically stabilized redox signaling molecules. When Delia and I heard that from Jim Glenn, who's on the Zoom tonight up in San Antonio, we didn't know what he was talking about. And we kind of backed off a little bit from it because when you hear something you don't understand, it's like, yeah, who knows? You know, let's figure it out first. So this is emerging health and wellness technology. This is being studied around the world. This is anti-aging, stuff that people are really interested in, but there's no really solution that we've had. How do you prevent your cells from aging? You know, this is something that they've thought about for a long time. Well, there is now science that begins to understand this. This is about cell regeneration, how your cells remake themselves, right? How they create new cells so that you don't look and feel old. And then here's something interesting. Every cell in your body needs this technology and also manufactures it. Okay, so we're going to look at that just for a second here. Is this advancing?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So in the 90s, you had some people that were studying this all over the world, and these three scientists received a Nobel Prize in 1998 for what was discovered in 1992, and that is that inside our cells, in the process of making energy, which it keeps us alive and allows us to walk and talk and breathe, in that process, there are these other molecules being produced inside of every human cell that allow us to repair and fix and replace damaged cells. At the beginning, they thought it was a garbage product, like something that needed to be pushed out of your body. But they began to study this over the years, and what they found out was, no, actually, these are the communication center of your body. And if you don't have these cells or these molecules available, then your body begins to age, and it can get ill, and it can actually cause disease. And so they received a Nobel Prize for this in 1998 for the first discovered signaling molecule, which was this nitric acid, all right? Or, I'm sorry, nitric oxide. Now, since then, we've had 6 more Nobel Prizes on these studies. Here you see, if you do the math, 1998, and then this is the 24th International Conference on, if you look, it says redox medicine. So since 1998, every single year, scientists and medical people from around the world have been meeting and talking about this subject. So it's not a secret. This is not a theory. This is not something that it's like, well, maybe there's Martians or not. No, this is a scientific fact now that is known. It's being studied, but it's still not completely merged into the scientific or the medical communities. So it's a wave of information that's beginning to disseminate. Now, here's something interesting that I'm going to pull up for you guys. This is pubmed.gov. It's a site any of you can go to. And this happens to be the National Library of Medicine put out by the NIH, which is the National Institute of Health. And if you will look on there, it says, by the way, I typed in redox signaling. I don't know if y'all can see that, but I came up with 38,342 medical articles on redox signaling. And if you look at the little graph over there, it says from 1953 to 2023. Do you see that graph? It starts like flat, and then all of a sudden in the last, few years, this thing's gone straight up. What happens? All of a sudden, we're beginning to understand more about these signaling molecules. And pharmacists and pharmaceutical companies and medical universities are all of a sudden extremely interested in this, and it's being studied and written on all over the place. Here's another one for you. This one is Google Scholar. Notice it's not Google Search, it's Google Scholar. So this is another site that's sponsored by basically the NIH. And if you look on there, I typed in redox signaling. Check it out. There are 2,910,000 medical articles written on redox signaling by medical people from around the world. So this is not a theory. This is what I'm trying to impress upon you. There's something that's happening. The people that are in the know or in the science and medical fields, they're studying this, they're looking at it, they're trying to figure it all out. But the rest of us, the regular people, we won't find out about it normally till it becomes like something on a shelf that you can buy, okay? So we're gonna talk about something now that's kind of interesting. This is a story of one of those companies that was studying this back in the 90s that finally went bankrupt because these molecules produced in the human cell are very, very, very fragile, and they don't last but a couple of minutes. If the body doesn't use them, they reconvert inside the cell into what they were originally made from, which is, are you ready for this? Salt and water, which is what is inside your cell. And so these things are being made continuously. If they're not used by the body, they reconvert and they're used again and again and again, this salt and water. Well, a company was studying this and found a way to actually produce this outside the human body. And they tried for 17 years. They could never stabilize it. They could make it, but they couldn't keep it. So it was not practical. And they were trying to cure some of those really terrible diseases that were happening back in the 90s. One of them that starts with A. You guys can visualize that. And they went bankrupt. They never made it. But they had put together an enormous amount of research. And they were really close, but they just couldn't stay in the saddle. They finally had to go bankrupt. And so there was a man, he's in the picture here, his name's Vertus Norton. He was retired from the Kraft Food Company. He was the genius that put together the marketing plan that made Kraft the largest food production, largest distributor of food in the world. And so Vertus Norton's retired, multi-wealthy, and he's just, like all really smart guys, he's involved in a lot of things. And his son, who's down there in the picture also, Tyler, who was a financial guy, said, Dad, I've got a company that's really struggling, but they got something. Would you just come take a look? So he agreed, joined their board of directors, and kind of hung out with them just in time to see them go bankrupt. And in the process, he saw what they were doing, and he said, this is really extraordinary. And so what he did was he basically purchased from this bankrupt company all the research, all the technology, took it home down to his basement up in Park City, Utah, and there he began playing with this stuff. And he began to use it himself. He began to drink it. He began to see the results. Then he brought in a scientist, and I'm going to play something here in a minute. I hope it all works. And this scientist's name's Gary Samuelson. He is a atomic or a nuclear physicist, one of these guys that's like on another planet, brain-wise. And what they were looking to do with this guy and his team was to stabilize these signaling molecules outside the body. And so he was able to do this finally. Nobody had ever been able to do it. The National Institute of Health had been trying for years and years and years, had invested millions of dollars to try to stabilize these molecules, had failed. No one in the planet Earth had been able to do it. And this guy, Gary Samuelson, and his team were able to finally make that happen. And so Vertus began to experiment with some people that he knew who were in life-threatening situations, people who were at the end of their rope. They had no other options, all right? And so he gave them this substance, now stabilized, which means it would not reconvert. And they began to drink this substance without knowing really what it was. These are guys that were like, we have no other options. And there was 40 of them, and they drank it for 60 days. And in 60 days later, here comes Vertus and his team, and they say, so what happened to you guys? And what they found was these people had sent it to 20 countries around the world, to friends and family that they had in other places. Now there was 135 people using this in different countries, and the results were astounding, of people who were getting benefits, who were starting to feel better, who had seen bad things that were happening in their bodies go away. So Vertus and his team realized we have something here that's very extraordinary. So they began to call the universities. They began to call the medical, all those people that study all this. They came in, looked, said, this is not possible. Not even remotely. We know, we've tried. And they said, there it is. And they checked it out and said, unbelievable. How'd you do this? And then came the pharmaceutical companies. And finally, the biggest one on the planet came in from Israel through their New Jersey headquarters, looked at it, tested it for 3 days, and finally came in and said, we don't know how you did this, but you got it, and we want it. And we're willing to pay you right now money with lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of zeros, but you got to turn it all over to us. Everybody has to stop using it. Everybody has to sign all kinds of documents that you're never going to mention this again. And Vertus Norton said, but wait, what about all these people? And they said, happens all the time. Every day people deal with stuff like that. Sorry. And Vertus Norton basically showed him the door. So he formed the Asea company in 2009, and they began to share this with the world. He knew, because it says salt and water on the back of the bottle. If you look at the ingredients, it says salt and water. So Mrs. Jones probably won't buy this in the supermarket. All right. So he knew that this would require an explanation. So they started with a small group, and today they're in 33 countries around the world. They've done over $1 billion in sales. So I'm going to try something here, and this may be a total flop. I don't know. We may never get back to where we were before. So we're going to try this. This is 5 minutes, but it's very powerful if it'll work. Okay. That's Gary Samuelson.
That's one we know.
Got to share the screen. You're not sharing the screen, Paul.
Okay, hang on a second. That's one of my Neanderthal mistakes that I make all the time. So y'all just bear with me here. We've got to share the screen. And there we go. Thank you, Senor.
Make sure you check the box that connect the audio.
Make sure I
okay.
check the box that connects the audio. Let's see if it works. Give me a second.
I'm Shelley Roby from Elizabethtown, Kentucky.
It's working.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Very soon.
Our sales age groups. And Part of the disease process is actually that your cells get damaged.
As we age, the healing process becomes a little bit more slow, less
Okay,
efficient.
let's just
We have to
listen.
find a way to have those cells rejuvenate.
Then
In
you-
our cells, we all have mitochondria. What the mitochondria do, that is the energy generating factory in our cell. As part of that process, there are molecules that are produced as byproducts. And these molecules are called reactive oxygen species. And these are molecules that make up the redox signaling system. What's important is that they be balanced. And depending upon our health circumstance, we can produce more or less of those molecules. And when they're not balanced, these become dangerous to the cell. They produce these little molecules that don't have a paired electron around their nucleus. And when they have to be neutralized, that's done by antioxidants. Well, those antioxidants can't work unless they become activated by this redox signaling system.
Redox signaling molecules are absolutely crucial to maintaining peak efficiency and cell function.
All about homeostasis and balance, and what it does is allow your body to perform at its maximum, at its best level, by balancing things within a cellular level.
This is a remarkable process because it is actually the process which allows us to regenerate tissue and maintain our health.
Well, see, it doesn't cure anything, but it does go into your cells that aren't functioning properly and enable them to work better.
As we age, we just don't produce enough of these molecules to maintain balance in our body. Asea is providing that. What I believe is groundbreaking is that we've been able to stabilize in certain mixtures of redox signaling molecules so that they can be effectively stored outside the body.
The beauty of Asea is that it helps support the cells so well that one doesn't have to take as many other supplements. And you just take less supplements and get the same result because the cell is so much more efficient.
It enables you to go into your cells, repair whatever cell damage has been done, make them work better. And then if you add exercise and diet onto that, you'll be even healthier.
Everything started making sense. I started connecting the dots. Yeah, I wanted to use this product because at the age of 55, my cell efficiency has dwindled. I was curious to see what my body would be capable of doing. And because it occurred to me that, hey, why not? Especially if I'm going to have an interest in perhaps sharing this with others, I need to be able to say, this is something.
I also noticed when I was working out a more significant amount of energy and longer endurance. And I really felt like I was 20, 25 years younger. It was incredible. I found that I experienced increased mental clarity, increased energy.
One of the great benefits that redox signaling can have for us is that it helps accelerate and maintain healthy tissue. I am so excited about this new awareness, this new paradigm of what we can do with our health.
I feel very confident giving this to all my patients. It's something that they need. It's something that their cells lack. And we're just restoring it because it is native to the body. It's already there, just not enough of it.
Every patient that I see, I share Asea with, and my story, my experience with Asea.
This technology has the potential of spearheading some of the greatest advances of health in the world.
I think the thing I like about Asea is it's very scientifically backed.
So just the same way your mom is trying, give you something that you really would need to help you get well. See it as providing a balance, just like your mom's chicken noodle soup. The possibility of being able to stabilize redox signaling molecules and use them as bioactive, non-toxic agents inside our body is phenomenal. And it will make a difference, and it will be the future technology that will affect almost all areas of health science. Will be.
So these guys are all extraordinary doctors, and that was Gary Samuelson, who actually was able to stabilize the stabilize these molecules. And so what do we got on the screen now? Am I back? Okay. I'm sorry? So these guys have just told you that they are looking at something that's going to change everything we know about health and aging. And this is stuff that the medical community is not going to embrace probably for the next 7 to 10 years. So there is a wave forming of information. There's a major paradigm shift occurring. There's something that is going to be common in the next 10 years that today nobody knows about. So where there is something like this going on, there's opportunity. And so I want to talk to you guys a little bit about that. These are just some of the flagship products that this company has now created. And I want you guys to know that this is a cellular health company. That's what they are. They're a cellular health company. Their whole concept is centered around how do you make the cells healthy in your body. And so they've got a line of products. I won't go through them all, but they're all involved and focused on the same thing. All right. So I'm getting ready to show you some testimonies. We're getting ready to talk about some things. And it's very important for you to know this has not been FDA approved. This is not a drug. This is a supplement. Therefore, we cannot make any medical claims about these products. We cannot say it cures or it heals or any other type of claim. All we can say is that these are the molecules that come just like produced inside your body that can help your body heal itself. That's what we're doing. All right. And so not evaluated by the FDA. You can't see what? Okay, that's awesome. Okay. So let's just do this. Give me a second, guys. I know this is really exciting. Where are we? Let's try this. And try that. And so let's see. Okay. When you put the Neanderthals in charge, this is what happens. Okay. Can you see that lady? Before and after. Now, this is either, you can't see it. Okay, guys, so bear with us here. We're at a real impasse here. Let's see, let's try this one. Okay. How about, can you see it now? Did it move forward? Okay. So what you're looking at is you're looking at 4 weeks using basically a form of the molecules that's a gel form. It's called Renew 28. It's the same thing that we have in the bottles, twice as concentrated. Why do you have to have a product? Well, in order to get this stuff in and or on your body, you got to have something, right? This is not telepathy. So we've got 2 flagship products, a liquid and a gel. This lady used the gel for 4 weeks. The picture doesn't lie, okay? And as Jim Glenn likes to point out, after 4 weeks, she said it didn't work until she saw the original picture, okay? So when I saw this, I said, well, this is either Photoshop or a lie or it's the truth. But I had to ask myself, if this is the truth, then that's a major, what we're looking at. That is only can be described as cell regeneration. That is when old cells are cast away and new cells are put in their place. And that's something that everybody's excited about if this is true, okay? Here's another one. Can you see that? Did that change? All right. So this is a lady that had, we call them bad cells, Mac. We can't say medical terminology. We're not supposed to say diseases or anything like that. So we have to say bad cells. This lady had some really bad cells in her face removed. You see the scar. She used this stuff from March until August using the Renewed 28. And you see the difference. You can barely see the scar. Again, what if this is true? Oh my gosh. If this is true, this is something that everybody needs to know about. All right. This lady right here in the picture on the left looks really unhappy. and not like she's pleased with anybody. And her son gave her some of the technology in both the forms, liquid and gel, and she used it for 7 weeks. And again, she said it did not work until she saw the picture that they took at the beginning. And so here she is in the first picture, she's 84 years old. The picture's on the right, she is 92 years old. Look at her face. She has been transformed. Not just the skin, but her whole demeanor has been changed. Why? Because it's also psychological. When you don't feel good, when you don't look good, you know, there's just something wrong with life. And when that changes, it changes everything. And so this is a joyful woman here in this picture on the right. All right. Now, we've been talking about exterior stuff. All right. This is a story of a young man who is 12 years old. He suffered a tick bite. And within a few days, a 12-year-old normal boy who was very healthy running around, this kid ended up in the hospital. And he was there in a coma for 17 days. This whole ordeal lasted 37 days. So let's see if I can, this is him in the hospital. In a coma, couldn't swallow, couldn't breathe. The doctor said he's gonna die. He has less than 5% chance to live. Okay, parents freaked out. A lady up in Kerrville, Texas knew the grandmother, gave her 4 tubes of this, got it on a bus, sent it to where this person was. By the way, it's across the border in Mexico. The parents snuck it into the hospital because the doctors would not allow anything that they didn't understand to be brought into the room. They snuck 4 tubes of this in, began to smear it all over the kid. 4 days after they began to apply it on his body topically, this kid opened his eyes, said, "I'm hungry," and sat up, okay? This stuff was eating him from the inside out. That's his foot. They actually had to remove some of his toes. He was literally turning black from this infection that was inside his body from this tick bite. That was what was going on from the inside of his body out. The skin was literally falling off his legs and off of his arms. And they began to apply this stuff. This kid began to sit up. He began to eat. Now he's at home, and it's like the ordeal's over. He's still got some stuff going on. I mean, he had some amputations and whatever. But this kid was lost. He was gone. And this substance that the doctors did not understand, made out of salt and water, this kid's now at home and he's alive. This guy right here, we met him at a conference. Apparently he had fallen off a building 7 years earlier, crushed his skull, broke his neck, broke his back, and he was literally almost living at this hotel where we were at, going to the hospital next door over and over and over for years. He met the lady in blue the day before in an elevator. The lady says to him in the elevator, "You look like you're in pain." And he said, "I most certainly am in pain." She made him stick his hand out, put some of this on his hand, told him to put it on his neck. 3 times. They did it in a couple of minutes. And the guy testified the following day in front of all of us. He said, "I don't know who you are. I don't know what this stuff is." He says, "But I am not in pain anymore for the first time in years." Major impact on this guy's life. This lady's Rose Monday. She was the North American Olympic track and field women's coach. And now she is something else. Jim knows, I forget, but she is the Olympic trainer for track and field right now for the U.S. team. This lady in 2017 had a serious jaw problem, couldn't swallow, couldn't chew, went to her dentist. The dentist put some of this on her face, and within a few minutes, the pain went away for the first time in a long time. She was like, "What the heck is that?" And so she began to look at it, investigate it. It turned out she was getting ready to have both knees replaced. She's a 400, 800 meter specialist. It was bone on bone, the doctor said. There's nothing we could do. You got to replace those knees. She began to use the product. After a couple of months, went back, told the doctors, "I have no pain. Why don't you check it out again?" And they looked and said, we don't understand it, but you got cartilage there between the bones now. So she has never had the knee surgery. You figure it out. I can't explain it. Whoop, this is Dr. Morin, I believe. He was on last week on Friday. He is a veterinarian. His friends made fun of him when he talked about this technology. His doctor friends made fun of him. So he did a little test. He put Renew 28 on half his face, and on the other half, he didn't put anything. And it's very obvious, even to me, and I'm half blind, that there's a big difference between the two sides of his face. On one side, it's smooth, and on the other side, he's got wrinkles and lines and crow's foot and all kinds of stuff. Something happened there. And if that's the truth, then this stuff proved itself out in 28 days. By the way, it's called Renew 28 because when you're young, science already knows when you're young, Aubrey, your cells renew every 28 days on your skin. Don't forget that, write that down. And so that's why they call this stuff Renew 28, all right? This is a lady, she has been a nurse practitioner for many, many years, and she had a condition for years where her hands shook so badly that she could not hold a glass to her lips. Her head shook so bad. She testified here before you guys when about 3 weeks ago, she said, even at my wedding, my head shook bad like I was like a rag doll. And so she has a sister who was a nurse practitioner who gave her some of this stuff, right? And she began to use it. And this is her sister talking about what happened.
Okay, Paul, this is my sister who has essential tremors. She's holding her cup. Her hand is practically completely still, and her head tremors have completely subsided. And so many, she said occasionally she gets a little tired, but you know, they're just gone, and she's sitting here just as still as can be. So I thought you'd like to have this little testimonial. And there's the other hand. And she hadn't been able to write clearly in years, and that has improved greatly. So praise God. Yep.
So there's a testimony, and both these ladies were nurse practitioners for over 20 years. Okay, so basically, this is just a website we have called Real Redox Results, and you need a password, Redox, but there's over 100 different testimonies of different kinds of conditions that people were struggling with. Okay, and you can look over on the left, there's all those little blue buttons, so you can go hit any one of those buttons. It says stuff like prostate, mental clarity, memory, joint pain, headaches, you know, stuff like that. You can touch one of those buttons and it'll bring you to the videos that correspond. Anybody in this group can help you, direct you to how you can get there. So again, not FDA approved. We can't claim to heal or cure, okay? So now we're gonna kind of flip the coin real quick. I'm just about finished here. The company, when they put this stuff out, figured that in order to get people to share this story around the world with others, there would have to be a sharing of the compensation. So what they did was they decided that they were going to share 50% of all the revenue with people like you, Charlie, like you, Aubrey. And so what's happened is they figured out our economy's kind of in bad shape. Right now, this is a report from February that says 50% of us live literally from paycheck to paycheck. That's not a good thing. So there is a need out there in the world right now. There's a need for secondary income. There's a need for other income streams because people are worried about, am I going to keep my job? Am I going to have a job? What happens if I get sick? What if they downsize? You guys know the routine. There is no security today, right? So life is a struggle. Life is a struggle. And so if you are basically working, if you're working by yourself, if you're alone in this struggle, then you're like the guy on the left. You're rowing this boat by yourself. He's in a storm, it's raining, there's a current. If anything happens to him, that boat probably will sink. On the right, you see some people who are also in a semi-stressful situation, but they're rowing together. They're pulling together. So it's not all dependent on one person, right? And so we want to talk about that just a little bit. This is from Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He says there's 4 ways you can have basically an income. You can either, on the left, you can have a job where you're trading hours for money, and that's great. We've all done it. Or you can own a job where you own the business and you're still trading hours for dollars. In either of those cases, if you get sick, if your building burns down, if whatever happens to the area, a storm, a pandemic happens, then that income stream will stop. Okay, and there's no money. On the right side, you have a business owner who owns a system where the system works for you instead of you working alone or you having to do everything. You have a system that works for you. And if you have enough money, you've got an investment situation where your money works for you. Those two are better. Okay, so we're going to talk about that real briefly. So if I'm alone working, then I'm limited to about 8 productive hours each day. If 2 of us, like Mac, if you and I are rowing together, now we've got 16 productive hours every day. We can get a lot more done. And if there's 10 of us working together, we've got 80 hours to get a lot more done in a 1 hour, a single day. And if we had 100 people, we'd be looking at 800 hours in 1 day. We could get a lot more done. And so networking is what we're talking about. Working together as a team allows us to develop a global team that no longer depends on the efforts of one person. So really, you have unlimited possibilities depending on how big your network becomes. It's unlimited, all right? And so, sorry, Ram, I skipped it. So we're going to use just a quick example here. McDonald's is well known, all right? It's a franchise, right? So a typical McDonald's restaurant basically brings in about 150,000 a year. We've got our local expert that says it's more than that now, but we're going to stick with this number right now, about 150,000 a year. The thing is, if the building burns down, if something happens in that area, if there's a flood or a storm, and that restaurant can't open their doors, basically there is no income, okay? These people have no leverage because they're depending on one restaurant. If you look at the McDonald's Corporation, though, they have multiple income streams. They've got 38,000 plus franchises around the world. So they're not worried about one restaurant. They got all these different income streams. And so they pull in about 6 billion a year. All right. And so you got Paul Getty. J. Paul Getty says, I'd rather have 1% of the effort of 100 people than 100% of my own. Right? Because he understands it's much better to have many, many, many different people working with you than to work by yourself. All right. So basically, this Asea company's created what they will call basically a global franchise, because for 40 bucks, they will sell you a system that allows you basically to, with no competition, because nobody else has this on the planet. There's one company on the whole planet Earth that has this. Nobody else does. They've been studying it for almost 13 years around the world, and nobody else has figured out how to stabilize this and put it in a bottle. Nobody has. So you have no competition. You have no employees. There's no warehousing of products. You don't have to store a bunch of it in your house. There's no collections. You don't have to worry about the money part. There's no distribution of products. The system handles all of that. No selling is required. You don't have to sell anything. You can if you want, but you don't have to. And this is a business that never sleeps. Why? Because it's in 33 countries around the world. You're basically being given the distribution rights in 33 countries around the world. Okay? So this is a disclosure statement from the company from 2020. You've got several columns there, but let's look at the one that's highlighted. That is a monthly average income for people who have built different groups or networks, if you will. So you see at the top, 345 bucks a month, go down the column all the way to $122,800 a month. Who are these different people that have developed these different income streams? Well, the guy at the top, the director, think about him in that little boat, maybe with just a few people. They're all using the product. That creates a volume, and the company shares income with them according to their volume. The next guy is a director 300. They got a few more people in the boat. They've got a little bit more volume. They're sharing a little more money with them, and so on down the line, right? The more volume, the more money, all right? So residual income, something very few of us have, unless you can sing and you have a, you got a platinum record out there, you wrote a really nice book. That is going, neither one of us, right? And you're getting paid a residual income on that stuff, but most of us don't. So this is income that comes in whether you get out of bed or not. You could be in Hawaii on the beach and that's still coming in every month. That's residual income. So did that switch? Yes. Okay. So here are the countries around the world where we have the right to distribution. So you might say, well, how would I ever do that? I don't know anybody over there. Well, I promise you, you know somebody that knows somebody that you don't know, that knows somebody that lives in Mexico, that knows somebody that lives in Colombia, that knows somebody that lives in Germany, France, Italy, Greece, England, Scandinavia, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, Philippines, Malaysia, Australia, New Zealand. You know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. And that's how you build a network of people. You just talk to people who talk to people who talk to people, and everybody in that network adds to your volume. And there are people in that network that'll make a lot more money than you because they actually build a bigger business than you, but you'll always get paid on all that volume. And so this is very different from the places we work. Now, here's a perfect example. This is Jose Luis Bazan. This is a picture of him in 2016. He's standing up with the cap on, blue t-shirt. He was a fire and rescue guy that we knew in another country. He is also a beekeeper. That's how we met him. He came and rescued some Africanized honeybees that were kind of giving us some trouble. And so we got to be friends with him. And eventually he moved to another country, to Colombia. And we located him there last year and found out he was doing very poorly there, that he was literally almost starving to death. So we helped him to get registered in the business. And so now, helping Jose Luis, and he, on his own initiative, he's now built a network that is in Mexico, Colombia, and Florida. And he was making like 15, 20 bucks a month in Colombia. Well, he's doing a whole lot better than that right now. And we, in fact, what did he just send us, baby? He just sent us, he just bought tickets to fly to Cucuta, Colombia, where he's going to go back to his original country and go see his parents and hand out money and have a good time over there. So it's a pretty amazing thing. He really went from way down the ladder financially to where he's not rich, but all of a sudden the boy's got some money. And it's like, wow, and it's pretty exciting to see. So this is not complicated. We open an account with Asea, remember it's 40 bucks, and we buy products and use them. And you want to create an income stream? Well, share this with some other people and help them open an account with Asea and show them how to buy some products. Your volume grows, more money. And then if you want more money, help those people share it with some other people to open an account with Asea and buy some products, and the volume grows and they give you more money. And at the end of every Friday, by the way, Asea sends us money. So this is actually pretty interesting. So when Debbie and I got involved in this, we were like excited because I had a back issue and she had some other issues. And we were kind of thinking, you know what, we're just old. In fact, that's what they told me at the doctor. In March of last year, I was told by my doctor, the reason you have all these aches and pains and problems is you're just old. And I was like, well, excuse me, that's not what I wanted to hear. And so that fellow over there, he's a real thorn, but yeah, he just kept harassing us. And eventually I said, what is it, Marcus? And he introduced us to Jim and Ann Glenn up in San Antonio. And we found out that Jim had had 10 lower back surgeries, 6 fused discs, had a fibrillator in his back. He was taking 500 medications a month. He was addicted to pain pills. And we found out that Jim had had a friend who'd had a son who had an issue, and that had gotten better. And the guy came and told Jim about this stuff, and he began to use it, and he got better. And so he started a business with this, and now they're doing really, maybe a few more reallys well. And they came over and shared it with Delia and with me, and we were very skeptical because that's my nature. I'm kind of like, yeah. But we looked at it. We were, we did the research, we listened and watched and read a little bit. And so we checked it out, we tried the products, and guess what? We got relief. And I was astounded because this is made out of salt and water. And it didn't make any sense to me at all. By the way, they make it up in Salt Lake City, Utah. My eye just fell off. So, you have every right to be skeptical at the beginning, but we found out it works. It works. And so when we found out it works, we were like, well, thank you, Lord. That's what we were looking for. We're going to zip it up and go our way. And God said to us, no, actually not. And he gave us this verse in Proverbs 24:11-12. And it says, deliver those who are drawn toward death and hold back those stumbling to the slaughter. If you say, surely we did not know this, does not he who weighs the hearts consider it? He who keeps your soul, does he not know it? And will he not render to each man according to his deeds? Delia and I realized that we had been handed a responsibility. And it was now our job to share this with other people, because there's a lot of people hurting physically, there's a lot of people hurting financially, and we have a solution. And so this is just the last slide. You may be a number 1, you may just not be real sure about this, you may be like, I have more questions. You may be number 2 and say, I just like to use it for my health. I just want to stay younger, healthier, longer. Or you may be a number 3 and say, you know what, my life's pretty busy, but I would like to use this and talk to a few people about it. And if I can pull in an extra 300, 500, 800,000 bucks a month, hey, awesome. That would help me pay some bills. And maybe you're number 4, like Jim and Ann Glenn, and say, this is what we've been looking for all our lives. We want to build a global network. We want to work from our home. We don't want to be like having to go check in every morning somewhere and stay there all day until they tell us we can go. And so depending on what it is that you want to do, there is a position for you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to stop this recording.